I know how deeply you, the entire nation, and I think I may say the whole world, sympathize with me in the irreparable loss we've all suffered.
The words were private, the audience carefully chosen, and the door firmly closed. Yet before the night was over, Queen Camilla's statement had escaped the palace and reached the very people it was never meant to confront. Within its pages was a devastating admission. King Charles had personally questioned whether she should remain queen. What began as a tense conversation between husband and wife had suddenly become a crisis threatening their marriage, their authority, and the crown itself. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles felt the danger before anyone explained it. An aide entered his study carrying a printed copy, placed it on the desk, and stepped back. The king read the opening paragraph twice. Then he removed his glasses and set them beside the pages without speaking. This was not a public address or official proclamation. It was a confidential statement prepared for a closed meeting, meaning a private discussion involving the monarch, the queen, and two senior secretaries managing their affairs. Camilla received the news later. A trembling aide entered her sitting room with a phone in his hand. She demanded to know who had seen the pages. When he answered that copies were moving through palace offices and had reached a national newspaper, the queen turned away. Anger came first. Humiliation followed. Her private words had exposed what she feared most, that she was being prepared as the sacrifice for a wider royal reset. The most damaging sentence struck harder than the leak itself. Charles had asked whether her presence beside him had become a burden the institution could no longer defend. The institution meant the monarchy as a system of duties, authority, and public trust. For Camilla, however, the phrase sounded brutally personal. It transformed a marital dispute into a judgment on her worth. Her statement went further. She accused unnamed members of the royal household of reducing her influence while pretending her position remained secure. That accusation carried weight because the household controls access, schedules, and royal decisions. Yet one page was missing. Page 4, believed to contain her answer to the king, had vanished from the circulated copy. Charles ordered an investigation. Camilla gave a colder instruction. Before anyone hunted the person who leaked her words, she wanted the name of whoever had persuaded her husband to question her future. To understand why one private question caused such devastation, the palace first had to confront what Charles and Camilla stood to lose, not only as monarchs, but as two people whose marriage had become inseparable from the survival of the crown. Behind the titles, ceremonies, and carefully rehearsed smiles stood a marriage that had survived scandal, public hostility, and decades of waiting. Charles had risked his reputation to place Camilla beside him. She had endured years of judgment to reach the throne. Now the question threatening them was brutally simple. If the monarchy could no longer carry both of them, which bond would the king protect, the marriage he fought to preserve, or the institution he was born to serve? Charles understood that questioning Camilla's future meant reopening one of the deepest wounds of his life. The queen had been the person who steadied him when public anger was at its loudest, and private pressure became almost unbearable. She had remained beside him through rejection, ridicule, and years of uncertainty. To doubt her place now felt dangerously close to admitting that the choice he had defended for so long had become a mistake. Camilla carried a different pain. She did not see the crown simply as rank or privilege. To her, becoming queen had been the final proof that every insult, every cold reception, and every year spent waiting had led somewhere. The title represented acceptance after humiliation. Losing influence so soon after reaching that position would not feel like an adjustment. It would feel like history had accepted her only long enough to reject her again. The morning before the leak, Charles entered their private dining room and found her already seated. The tea between them remained untouched. Neither spoke until she finally asked whether he still intended to hold the meeting. The king answered carefully, but caution only sharpened the hurt. He told her he was questioning the role, not the woman. Camilla did not look away. She reminded him that the world had never separated her identity from her position, and neither could he now. Her words landed with quiet force because both knew the truth. Any reduction in her duties would be judged publicly as a rejection, whatever language the palace used to disguise it. William had already warned his father that the unresolved tension surrounding the queen was beginning to overshadow preparations for the monarchy's next phase. The prince was thinking about stability, succession, and the future shape of royal leadership. Yet Camilla saw something more personal. The leaked statement revealed her fear that Catherine was being positioned as the emotional center of the family, while her own presence was slowly being reduced. Charles had intended to settle the matter before the next palace council, a formal meeting where senior royal decisions would be reviewed. That deadline meant Camilla's future was already moving toward judgment without her controlling the pace. But the crisis had not begun with the leaked pages. It had started weeks earlier, during one ceremony, when Camilla made a decision that forced Charles to question how far her authority should reach. That ceremony would later be remembered as the moment private unease became royal alarm, and the moment postponing the Queen's future was no longer possible. Every royal crisis has a moment that appears insignificant, until history looks back and recognizes the fracture. For Charles and Camilla, it came during a private honors ceremony at Windsor Castle. One name was added, one instruction was issued, and one objection was ignored. The room remained polite, but the balance inside the monarchy changed. By the time the final guest departed, Charles had seen something in his wife's determination that he could no longer dismiss as a misunderstanding. Camilla had ordered that one of her longtime personal advisors be placed ahead of a candidate already approved by the king's household. An honors ceremony is a formal royal event in which individuals are publicly recognized for service, and the order of those being presented carries both symbolic and institutional weight. Charles had withheld consent, yet the Queen's instruction remained on the final list. That single alteration suggested she believed her authority could stand apart from his. Charles noticed the change only moments before the presentations began. He asked her to step into an adjoining room, closed the door, and held out the amended paper. The king told her the original order had to be restored. His voice remained controlled, but the restraint only revealed how serious the matter had become. Camilla refused. She told him that being queen without meaningful authority reduced her to decoration. When Charles reached for the document, she placed her hand over it and would not move. The queen had endured years of judgment to reach this position, and she would not accept a role that looked powerful while leaving every real decision in someone else's hands. Princess Anne stood beyond the half-closed inner door and heard enough to understand that this was no longer a dispute over one advisor. The Princess Royal, a title given to the monarch's eldest daughter, recognized a deeper danger. Two competing ideas of authority were beginning to form inside the same household. Anne stayed silent then, but she did not forget what she heard. Charles returned to the chamber with the original list restored. He conducted the ceremony himself and passed over Camilla's advisor without acknowledgement. She remained beside him, composed and silent, but she did not look toward her husband again. Later, Anne told her brother that private loyalty could not become public confusion. Charles defended Camilla, insisting she had acted from frustration rather than ambition. Yet the king did not reject the warning, and that silence mattered. That night, he instructed his private secretary to prepare written options concerning the Queen's future duties. A private secretary is the senior official who manages a royal's official work, advice, and sensitive correspondence. The order eventually led to the closed meeting and the statement that would later be leaked. When Camilla discovered those options had been drafted without her knowledge, she stopped treating the matter as a disagreement. She began preparing for battle. The leak exposed the crisis, but the confrontation that followed would reveal its true depth, because Camilla was no longer asking whether Charles doubted her role. She was demanding to know whether he still intended to defend her. The palace had prepared briefing papers, security reviews, and carefully measured responses. None of them mattered when Camilla entered Charles's private study and closed the door behind her. There were no advisors between them, no photographers, and no ceremonial smiles to protect either side. She placed the leaked statement on his desk and demanded an answer that could not be softened by protocol. Had the man who fought to make her queen finally decided that the crown would be safer without her? Camilla had entered without being announced, the folded pages pressed beneath her arm like evidence in a trial. Charles dismissed the aide beside him and waited until the door shut before speaking. The king said he had not decided to remove her. He had only asked whether reducing her official position might protect the monarchy from an internal struggle over authority. Yet the explanation sounded colder than he intended, because the damage had already reached far beyond titles and duties. Camilla pushed the statement across the desk. "Look at me and say you want me gone." Charles remained standing. He opened his mouth, then stopped. That hesitation cut deeper than any answer. The queen told him she had endured decades of hostility, humiliation, and public suspicion because he had promised that their life together meant more than the judgment surrounding them. Now, after she had finally reached the place he once insisted she deserved, he was reconsidering her worth, because defending her had become difficult again. The king tried to separate affection from authority, but she refused to let him hide behind that distinction. He admitted that several senior figures believed her independent instructions were creating two competing centers of power inside the royal household. The phrase meant that staff no longer knew whether final direction came from the monarch or from the queen's office. What looked like confusion on paper felt like betrayal in the room. Then William's name entered the argument. Charles revealed that the prince had raised concerns about the future structure of the monarchy. Camilla's anger hardened at once. She said the future king had been waiting for an excuse to limit her influence from the beginning, and now her husband had given him one. She warned that if her role were reduced, she would not cooperate with a carefully managed transition designed to make her disappearance appear voluntary. She would not smile, withdraw, and allow the palace to rewrite humiliation as duty. Charles reached for his pen as though preparing to record her words. Camilla removed it from his hand and laid it flat on the desk. This was a marriage, she told him, not a council meeting. The king finally admitted the truth. He had not reached a decision, but the authority to settle the matter no longer belonged to him alone. Camilla entered believing she was fighting her husband's doubt. She left knowing that a wider force inside the monarchy was already shaping the verdict. A crown may rest on one head, but its survival is guarded by many hands. Behind Charles stood advisors, studying public confidence, constitutional boundaries, succession planning, and the stability of the next reign. Camilla saw betrayal. The palace saw risk. Between those two truths sat the king, forced to listen as people who bowed to his wife in public calmly debated how the monarchy might function, with her authority reduced, her appearances limited, and her voice removed from major decisions. Charles entered the palace council alone. The council was a closed group of senior advisors responsible for guiding major royal decisions, and every person around the table understood that this meeting could reshape the queen's future. An empty chair had been placed beside the king's own. He looked at it for several seconds, then quietly asked an aide to remove it. The room held people with influence far beyond their public visibility. His senior constitutional advisor, the Lord Chamberlain, private secretaries, and representatives coordinating William's future role. The Lord Chamberlain is the senior official who oversees the working life of the royal household. Together, they placed three options before Charles. Camilla could remain unchanged, keep her title while surrendering major responsibilities, or withdraw completely from senior royal duties. William spoke with controlled restraint. The prince insisted he was not seeking revenge and had no desire to humiliate his father's wife. Yet he could not allow uncertainty over Camilla's authority to pass into his future reign. The future king said staff needed to know where final power rested, because confusion today could become conflict tomorrow. Princess Anne challenged her brother more directly. She told Charles that protecting someone from consequences was not the same as protecting them from cruelty. The words unsettled him because they removed the excuse he had relied upon for years. The king could preserve Camilla's dignity without pretending every decision she made was harmless. Then the evidence was presented. The council reviewed several occasions when members of the Queen's office had issued instructions without confirmation from Charles's household. Appointments had been altered, schedules had been changed, staff had received competing directions. Each incident appeared manageable alone, but together they formed a pattern no one could ignore. One advisor then raised a darker possibility. The statement may not have been leaked at random. Someone could have released it deliberately, hoping public pressure would force the monarch to decide before he was ready. Security staff soon delivered another shock. They had recovered part of the missing fourth page. Camilla had written that she would take irreversible action if her role were diminished. Before anyone could determine what those words meant, the Queen canceled her next public engagement and summoned her closest staff to an emergency meeting. The debate had moved from theory to consequence, and Camilla's response made the palace fear she intended to leave on her own terms. There was no dramatic announcement and no public farewell. Camilla simply began removing herself. A reception vanished from her schedule. Briefing folders were returned unopened. Staff members were told not to prepare remarks for events she had attended every year. Each decision appeared small, but together they formed a warning the palace could not ignore. If Charles was considering a monarchy with less of her, the Queen was prepared to show him exactly what her absence would feel like. Camilla canceled a major reception, postponed meetings with charities, and instructed her office to accept no new engagements until her future had been clarified. The withdrawals created immediate confusion, because several upcoming events had been arranged around the King and Queen appearing together. Staff now faced impossible questions. Should speeches be rewritten? Should invitations be changed? Should the palace admit why she was missing? Camilla offered them no easy answer. Alone in her office, she removed a framed photograph of herself beside Charles and placed it face down inside a drawer. Then she returned a stack of unsigned papers to her staff. The gesture was quiet, but the meaning was unmistakable. She would not continue performing certainty while others debated whether she still belonged at the center of royal life. A longtime aide finally asked whether they should begin preparing for departure. The Queen paused beside the door. She did not say yes. She did not say no. She told them to prepare for honesty. Charles felt her absence before he fully understood its power. At a diplomatic reception, the king glanced repeatedly toward the place where his wife normally stood. He maintained his composure, but halfway through his remarks, he lost his place. The silence lasted only seconds, yet those seconds exposed what the palace had tried to hide. Camilla's withdrawal was no longer private. It was beginning to alter the monarch himself. Then investigators recovered another fragment from page 4. The missing sentence revealed that she had considered issuing her own public statement if the palace reduced her role, without admitting the conflict behind the decision. She would not allow rejection to be repackaged as graceful retirement. Security records deepened the crisis. Only 5 people had accessed the original document, and 1 belonged to Camilla's own communications team. Before investigators could question the aide, that person vanished from the palace, leaving behind an unlocked cabinet and a handwritten note containing only 3 words. She deserved warning. The betrayal had come from within her circle. With trust collapsing around them, Charles stopped relying on advisors. He went to Camilla's private rooms without papers, without officials, and without the protection of his office. For the first time since the crisis began, the king approached his wife not as monarch, judge, or strategist, but as the man who feared he had already lost her. The decisive moment did not occur before the council, or beneath the glare of the press. It came late at night, behind a locked door, when Charles found Camilla sitting beside an untouched fire, with the leaked statement resting in her lap. No aides waited outside to shape their language. No official record would preserve what followed. For once, the future of the Queen depended not on institutional calculation, but on whether 2 people could speak honestly, after years of allowing duty to speak for them. Charles entered alone and asked whether he could sit. Camilla did not answer, but she lifted the statement from the chair beside her and placed it across her knees. The silence between them no longer felt angry. It felt exhausted. The king admitted that the leak had forced him to see how long fear, doubt, and resentment had been allowed to grow without either of them naming it. Camilla finally spoke without ceremony. Losing duties would not destroy her, she said. Losing trust already had. What wounded her most was not the review itself, but discovering that Charles had discussed her future with advisors, William, and members of the household, before speaking openly to the woman whose life would be changed by it. The king did not defend himself. He confessed that he had hidden behind procedure because he feared being forced to choose between his wife and his duty. Camilla answered with painful calm. By refusing to choose, he had wounded both. Then she explained the phrase that had frightened the council. Irreversible action had never meant revenge, exposure, or retaliation. It meant permanent withdrawal. The Queen would rather leave public life completely than remain in a ceremonial position, stripped of authority and dignity. She would not become an ornament used to preserve appearances. Charles offered a different path. Camilla would remain queen, but her office would no longer control appointments or constitutional planning, meaning decisions tied to the structure and future authority of the monarchy. She could choose a smaller group of public duties and continue supporting the causes that mattered most to her. Camilla listened, but she set one condition. The king had to accept responsibility in public for beginning the review. She would not allow the palace to suggest that she had stepped back quietly, because she was weak, unstable, or unable to continue. Charles reached for her hand. She did not take it at first. The pause carried every betrayal, every sacrifice, and every year they had spent defending one another. Then Camilla folded the leaked statement, placed it on the table, and finally rested her fingers in his. Their marriage had survived the confrontation, but the crisis was not yet over. By morning, Charles and Camilla had chosen a path together. Outside the palace gates, millions were already deciding what they believed the leaked statement had revealed. At sunrise, the private language of a royal marriage became the public language of a national debate. Broadcasters abandoned their planned schedules. Newspaper presses ran through the night. Crowds gathered not for celebration, but for confirmation that the Queen's position had truly been questioned by the King himself. Some saw Camilla as a woman betrayed after decades of loyalty. Others saw a necessary correction. Yet one image outside Buckingham Palace captured the mood more powerfully than every argument. News organizations treated the leak as the most serious internal dispute of Charles's reign. The shock did not come only from the words Camilla had written. It came from the fact that the king had questioned whether his wife should continue in her present role. That made the crisis larger than gossip. It became a public test of marriage, authority, and the limits of royal power. Palace officials responded with a tightly controlled statement. They confirmed that royal duties were under review, while insisting Charles and Camilla remained united. The wording tried to calm the country, but it convinced almost no one. Unity sounded fragile when the Queen's private anger had already been exposed. Outside Buckingham Palace, one woman held up a newspaper toward waiting cameras. Its front page showed Camilla alone beneath the words, "Queen but for how long?" She said nothing. She did not need to. The headline turned the entire scandal into one brutal question. A crowd gathered near the Victoria Memorial, the monument standing opposite the palace, and often used as a meeting point during major royal events. Some people carried flowers in support of Camilla. Others held handwritten signs demanding clearer limits on her authority. Sympathy and suspicion stood only steps apart. Camilla watched the coverage in silence. When the front page appeared, she switched off the television and asked her aide whether Charles had approved the palace statement. The answer mattered because she had demanded that he accept responsibility publicly rather than hide behind officials. Charles had already rejected attempts to describe the review as routine. The king insisted the announcement acknowledge that he had initiated the discussion. He would not allow his wife to carry the humiliation alone. William privately supported the compromise. The prince believed it created a necessary boundary between Camilla's personal place beside Charles and her institutional influence. She could remain queen without creating uncertainty over who controlled the monarchy's future. Then the palace made its final announcement. Charles and Camilla would appear together that afternoon for the first time since the leak. No speech could erase what had happened. Only one gesture could reveal whether their marriage had survived. The final verdict would not come through leaked pages or official briefings, but through the way Charles and Camilla stepped forward after the crown forced them to redefine both their power and their marriage. When Charles and Camilla finally appeared, the crowd expected strain, distance, or another carefully manufactured illusion of unity. Instead, the king stopped before descending the palace steps and waited for his wife to reach him. She stood beside him, not behind him, not ahead of him, and he offered his arm. The gesture did not erase the leaked statement or the question that caused it. It revealed the answer. Camilla would remain his queen, but she would no longer govern the boundaries of her authority. Charles confirmed the settlement in a palace statement, an official declaration explaining decisions made by the monarch and his household. Camilla would keep the title of queen and continue supporting selected charities and ceremonial duties. Yet her office would no longer issue independent instructions on appointments, succession planning, honors, or the wider royal household. Succession planning meant preparing leadership for the next reign, and that power would remain under the king and the future monarch. Camilla accepted the arrangement without retreating. During the joint appearance, she thanked the staff who had supported her. Her voice tightened, but she finished every word. Charles then stated that the review had begun at his instruction, and that the agreement had been reached together. The king refused to let his wife carry the humiliation alone. William stood several steps behind them. The prince accepted that the compromise protected the monarchy's future, without publicly diminishing his father's marriage. He did not celebrate Camilla's reduced authority. He recognized that uncertainty had ended, and clarity mattered more than victory. The final revelation came through a documented internal confession. The communications aide admitted releasing the statement because she believed Camilla would enter the council meeting unaware of how seriously her future was being discussed. The aide was dismissed. The queen did not forgive the betrayal, but she rejected a public confrontation, knowing another scandal would damage the dignity she had fought to preserve. Camilla returned to her office, removed the photograph of herself beside Charles from the drawer, and placed it upright again. The king watched from the doorway before closing it behind him. The leak did not remove her from the throne or destroy their marriage. It destroyed the illusion that love and royal authority could remain the same thing. Charles kept his wife beside him while limiting the power attached to her position. Camilla accepted that boundary because dignity mattered more than resentment. The crown survived because both surrendered something. He gave up silence. She gave up unrestricted influence. Camilla remained queen. Charles remained her husband, and the monarchy emerged with its authority clarified, the crisis complete, the decision final, and the emotional cost impossible to hide. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.